We were going to declare another independence, the dawn of a new nation, here. The end of the Patriots' secret rule, liberation of this country. This was where it was supposed to begin. This is where freedom could have been born.
So at the end of MGS2, we assume Solidus dies after falling atop a Federal Hall after Raiden hit him with a crucial strike with a katana. But in typical Metal Gear fashion, it turns out Solidus is still alive. Be it in a biomorph form in MGS4, a reference from Police Notes. Ocelot would throw him in the fire after gaining access to the SOP in Europe, since Solidus' genetic code is identical to Big Boss's, rendering the Patriots' machinations useless to an extent. We know how the story ends, but what if our beloved President George Sears survived? And how different would the world be if he was still alive, and what could have transpired in the events of MGS's narrative? I feel like this was an interesting topic to bring up, and out of the Metal Gear community and on YouTube, I haven't seen anybody make a video on this, so why not make it a first? So we know Solidus' ultimate goal was to crush the Patriots and bring back things to the people that they seem so blissfully unaware of, such as freedoms and individuality, freedom of speech, and liberty, and for the people to be able to leave a mark in history, a legacy of their own to be remembered rather than being forgotten through the Patriots' AI, filtration of information system, should we say.
Remembered by other people, by history. The Patriots are trying to protect their power, their own interests, by controlling the digital flow of information.
Tired of being a pawn, Solidus orchestrated the Shadow Moses incident. His intentions were to have Ocelot steal Rex's data and the experimental nuclear warhead with it, which was to be armed. Sears hoped to use this as a tool against the Patriots. An unplanned factor, however, came when the Secretary of Defense ordered to commence a nuclear air raid on Shadow Moses after Rex was presumably destroyed. Well, for the most part. Solidus could have assumed Shadow Moses was totaled along with Metal Gear Rex, but we will get back to that later.
It takes a well-balanced individual such as yourself to rule the world. No, sir. No one knows that you were the third one, Solidus.
After this, Solidus was now meant to be eliminated by the Patriots for the act of defiance. He went underground and joined forces with Sergei Kalukovich's private army of mercenaries, as well as the rogue anti-terrorist unit Dead Cell. From there, taking over the Big Shell's facility, a Patriot planted disguise for the S3 and their secret weapon known as Arsenal Gear hidden underneath. The Patriots, being one step ahead, most likely saw this as a great way to bring Solidus to the surface into their line of attack, with agents like Raiden acting as a proxy of Solid Snake during the Shadow Moses incident to eliminate him, and worst of all, Double Agent Ocelot acting as Solidus' right-hand man was doing their bidding of the Patriots the entire time whilst fooling them for the long game to defeating them, as we come to know at the end of the series.
An orchestrated recreation of Shadow Moses. What?
All came to Solidus' downfall. Even at the beginning, the Patriots had his number. Ocelot even tried to finish the job by eliminating Solidus, but fortune pretty much saved everyone.
What the? Impossible!
But as hopeless as Solidus' attempts to liberate the world may have unfolded, he still had one trump card. He wasn't exactly naive. He pretty much figured out Fat Man was an agent of the Patriots, as well as Raiden.
I've been waiting for you. A messenger from the Patriots. Where do I know him from?
and once Raiden got captured and questioned, he pretty much understood the answers he sought were in Raiden's cerebral cortex, and he had all the confirmation he needed when attempting to kill Raiden, with Olga jumping out of the shadows, revealing what Solidus has always suspected, that he's pretty much surrounded by Patriot puppets. It was initially believed that Solidus planned to expose the Patriots by using Arsenal gear to detonate a nuclear warhead over New York City skies, where the high-altitude blast would create a gigantic electromagnetic pulse and bring Wall Street to a halt, toppling the Patriots' power over the business community in Manhattan and spurring the world into a panic. He would then free Manhattan from the Patriots' digital yoke and establish the liberated zone of Outer Heaven in its place. However, he was going to give Arsenal gear to Dead Cell leader Fortune to draw the Patriots' attentions, while Solidus would hunt the Patriots, 12 individuals down to kill off one by one, although we know that these members from the Wise Man Committee, or rather the Philosophers as mentioned in MGS3, these members had been dead for a long time.
The last of the original members died in the 1930s. After that, the organization began to run out of control, and the Wise Men's Committee degenerated into a mere shell of its former self. The philosophers of today have no sense of good or evil. Their influence extends to countries and organizations involved in every aspect of every war.
Snake, you there? It's me. I've finished going over that disk.
Did you find the Patriots list?
Of course. It contains the personal data of 12 people. There was a name on it. Snake, it was one of our biggest contributors.
What's going on around here?
I don't know.
Anyway, where are they?
Well, we were right about them being on Manhattan, but...
But what?
They're already dead. All 12 of them.
When did it happen?
Well, about 100 years ago.
What the hell?
So the information would have been bogus anyway, even if he managed to retrieve it from GW or the disk that President Johnson gave Raiden, which was used to disable GW temporarily. The worm cluster was basically created by the Patriots to ensure terrorists like Solidus, or rather heroes, could not let their hands get onto it, but if they did, hypothetically, there'd be a fail system that would stop them from doing so. Emma was unknowingly employed by them to upload it, acting as another proxy in their game, hence the whole failure of this plan that Solidus intended to use. But with that being said, the characters hoped that GW would be completely destroyed, but it was only partially damaged.
Just leave it to Emma. What the?
An antibody agent?
Damn! The connection's been cut.
Is the virus upload complete?
I don't think so. The count stopped at 90%. Otacon.
I don't think Emma's made any mistakes. But a portion of the worm cluster might have been altered after the disk left Emma's hands.
By the Patriots?
So with all of that aside, and Solidus' plans not going to plan because the Patriots were one step ahead, his only winning hand was inside of Raiden's nanomachines, which had the current location of the Patriots' whereabouts, and the corpse of Big Boss.
I have other reasons for wanting you dead. The clues to the Patriots inside GW have been erased, but there are other traces. Inside you.
What?
The information is being carried by the nanomachines in your cerebral cortex, and throughout the neural network they've formed.
As the story of MGS4 implies, Raiden revealed that he had worked with Eva to steal Big Boss's body from the Patriots in exchange for help in rescuing Sonny. So it appears that Raiden had the location of Big Boss's remains. So when Eva tries to fool the audience into believing that the real Big Boss's corpse is inside that van, she knew all along it wasn't, because it's also implied that she actually knew where the real Big Boss's body was and reconstructed parts of it with Liquid's body parts and Solidus' body parts. It was just a ruse that she was running with to the very end. Because let's remember, Eva goes way back to the formation of the Patriots. She essentially gave birth for them. So in doing so, she realises that Solid Snake is an agent of the Patriots and she can't exactly tell him the truth.
Start a new organization, the Patriots, which would carry out the final wishes of a certain legendary hero. The initial membership consisted of Big Boss, Sigint, paramedic, and their commander, Zero. Oh, and there was one more who we mustn't forget. He stayed behind in the Soviet Union to support the group as an informant. Ocelot, who is now Liquid. After your father rescued me in Hanoi, I went to America and joined their organization. To realize this, I asked to serve as the surrogate mother, and was more than happy to carry you in my womb. I loved him. 9 months later, I gave birth to 2 big bosses, you and Liquid. It didn't matter that you were clones, or that they had manipulated your DNA. You were born the same way as any other normal child, from your mother's womb.
This really is an important detail in a what-if moment if Solidus survived, so bear this in mind. All of this would have been crucial for Solidus, as one of his other leads, such as Ocelot, departed with a Metal Gear Ray pretending to be Liquid, hijacking Ocelot's body. A Patriot spy who is a founding member of the Patriots would have this information, especially the location.
You were inside Ocelot?
Yes, a sleeper in the arm of a Patriot spy.
It was you 2 years ago?
Exactly. I was controlling him. Snake, it was I that leaked information about Arsenal to your partner and got you out here.
What?
You're the only one that can free me. After all, I'm off to bury the Patriots for good.
You know where they are? How?
Why do you think I chose Ocelot as my host?
Solidus was present at the time, but wasn't quick enough to plant a tracker of his own like his brother Solid Snake, who assumed the tracker didn't come to much use after the Manhattan incident, since it was implied Colonel Campbell had tracked Liquid down.
Do you know where Liquid went? I put a transmitter on his ray. Did he head for the Patriots? Yeah, but I have a feeling they gave Ocelot a bogus location to begin with.
We found him. In the Middle East.
Solid Snake's statement makes sense. The Patriots most likely gave Ocelot a bogus location, hence why he never ended up finding Big Boss's corpse or even Zero himself. Ocelot explains this in MGS5 after Zero got taken into a hidden location after the Parasite incident attack by Skullface. Even Ocelot himself, one of Zero's closest allies, couldn't even find him anymore.
He had a blackout triggered in New York to disrupt the transportation and information grids, and at least 2 submarines were sighted off the coast. The personnel involved were working off a cover story. Naturally, the White House was fed the same thing. The project is buried under a pile of dummy ops and backup plans stretching across multiple organizations. It's safe to say not one of the people involved knew what they were moving or to where. All top secret, no trail, no leads. He's living up to his name as usual. Only this time, even I can't find him. Now, the only record of his location lies within the Cypher AI that was at the heart of the escape plan, and that's closed off, with its data sealed away in a secret location.
However, given the nature of the story, if Solidus lived, Ocelot and Solidus would probably have to reunite at some point, given that they both have actual crucial pieces of information to access the Patriot systems. But we'll get to that. So Solidus will kill Raiden, and from there, most likely make his escape from New York. See what I did there? He even would have had to somehow transported Raiden's body somewhere discreet, with the help of a few mercenaries from Gorlukovich forces kitted out in elite Tengu outfits. With a few associates at hand, he would most likely extract the data he needs out of Raiden's dismembered body. Sonny would be dead, since Raiden's vitals are linked to Sonny's termination, which means FoxAlive wouldn't be created.
Your nanomachines, they're transmitting your vital signs to the Patriots. If you die, my child dies. You understand?
And Rosemary would most certainly be dead too. Once Solidus has the information on Big Boss's location, chances are he might use it as a bargaining chip, because knowing Ocelot is going to try recover the GW AI on board Arsenal, assuming that Solidus didn't retrieve it first after Raiden's death.
GW was one of the Patriot cell AIs.
It was installed on Arsenal gear. Emma's worm should have put it permanently out of commission. But Liquid somehow recovered and repaired it. I'm guessing JD must be unable to recognize GW, even though it's inside the Patriot system. It's a blind spot. GW was written off as lost while it was still tied in. Using it let Liquid interfere with the AI from the inside. He made contact under the guise of Big Boss's genetic code. Even the AI threat detection system was fooled.
Immediately or after. Either way, it's a race against the clock, as Solidus is suffering from accelerated aging just like his brothers, given on his lack of knowledge on the Patriots. That's the leverage Ocelot would have over him and would most likely require him to get in contact with Liquid Ocelot on a blackmailing trade. Solidus would tell Ocelot over secure networks he has the remains of Big Boss. Bear in mind, Solidus would be oblivious still, unless he managed to figure out the Patriots were actually a digital AI controlling most of the world. As cunning as Ocelot is, he would try to devise some plan to get Big Boss back, playing his cards close to his chest. He probably couldn't use the excuse that the founding members still exist, because Solidus would probably use his own men to investigate these places of the information he's been given without falling into one of Ocelot's traps, since he knows now Ocelot's deceptive tactics. Ocelot pretty much confirmed it in his Liquid Snake persona that he chose Ocelot as his host since he is a Patriot spy. He kinda gave away the ruse. Solidus would have his guard up and most likely want some sort of proof that his information is true. His analyst would confirm in an undisclosed location. Essentially, I'd call it a trade swap for Big Boss's remains for GW, allowing Solidus access to the neural network of the Patriots AIs and subsequently being able to control the SOP system and being halfway into destroying the Patriots' rules and anyone who tries to oppose him. The problem is, Ocelot wouldn't mention anything about needing Big Boss's genetic code to Solidus in order to fully access the system for himself, because at this time he wouldn't have the knowledge to do so, and neither would Solidus. At this point, Ocelot would be trying to revive Big Boss, replacing missing limbs, but would run into a snag that would cause both him and Solidus to eventually have to join forces again, at least as associates since they shared the similar goal of destroying the Patriots. But would Solidus need Big Boss's genetic code to access the system? I mean, Ocelot needs this to happen so when the Patriots AI is destroyed, Big Boss will awaken from his coma.
Ocelot and Eva wanted two things: to bring me back to life and to end the Patriots. That meant destroying the AI and killing the man, JD and Zero.
But what's unusual about the next part, that kinda gives MGS4 a slight plot hole that's open for headcanon, is we're told that Solidus' remains were used to access the Patriot system and into giving the location of JD that controls them all. And because he is a perfect clone of Big Boss, you would think that Solidus wouldn't need Ocelot's help at all. He could just use his own DNA, kill Big Boss, and destroy JD, and voila. Unless, as Raiden implied, he just wants the power and keeps the system for himself to take over the world, which seems unlikely but not impossible. I'll let you guys be the judge of what his intentions will be, because it's very ambiguous. But the way I see it is, the SOP system relies on nanomachines to interface with individuals. Solidus, during his lifetime, didn't possess the specific nanomachines required to interact with the SOP system. He was most likely stuck on second or first generation. These nanomachines were developed and implemented after his death. The SOP system doesn't rely solely on DNA for authentication, it also requires other factors, such as biometric data and possibly behavioural patterns. Solidus being alive would have been presented a different set of data compared to a corpse, potentially raising red flags within the system, the AI detection. Either way, Solidus is definitely an oversight that ultimately cost the Patriots when you think about it.
Finished yet. The first generation were never ID registered, so they don't react in the same way as the SOP nanomachines. Ready?
But if we're going along with what-if storylines, Solidus can't access the Patriots' AI because of what I've mentioned in the latter, so together, Solidus and Ocelot use Big Boss's remains to access the system.
It's the final key he needs to gain access to SOP. The keys to the system are Big Boss's genetic code and biometric data. Without them, there's no way to gain access.
Wait, what's Liquid been doing all this time?
During this time, the Patriots' red flags would be waving, and it's more than likely the UN and the United States, the foundation of the Patriots' control system, would catch wind of Liquid Ocelot's and Solidus' plans of the closing the Patriot system down. Solid Snake would be introduced like before in MGS4 to investigate the disturbance, sneaking his way through Ocelot's private forces since he owns most of the PMC groups at all at this point, but the jagged edge of the relationship between Ocelot and Solidus would start to form. However, between them they would wield immense power because they now control SOP, so most people's weapons would be rendered useless against them. But anyway, if you now all remember, the program Sonny produced would keep most of what was important about society intact, such as infrastructure, law and order, and the foundations that keep society functioning aside from the Patriots' control. But if Sonny is dead after Raiden's fall, the fighting chance at the end of MGS4 becomes more hopeless, not because Snake is incapable of pulling off the impossible, but because intellectual means of preserving society while keeping it functional are now gone. And let's be honest, Snake doesn't have the slightest idea how this system works. Snake even says it himself. Ocelot could have stopped him.
Why? You could have stopped us. I stopped you. Why would I want to do that? This is just as I'd hoped things would end.
But Ocelot's intentions were always to eliminate the Patriots anyway, be it if it ended the way it did, or from the way that he was intending to do it, which would also be Solidus' way too. To destroy JD with a naked nuke from Metal Gear's ray gun they would retrieve from Shadow Moses, since Ocelot would have most likely have told Solidus that Shadow Moses is still intact.
Launch your stealth nuclear warhead at JD.
I thought you couldn't control the nuke with GW.
We can't. We've taken over their guns and heavy weapons, but the WMDs are still under JD's control. That's where Rex comes in. I know where to find nukes they don't control. Vamp, how long until Rex is ready?
All that's left is the final check. We've identified JD's location through GW, an abandoned 20th century satellite orbit disguised as debris.
A clever place to hide.
Satellite orbit.
With a stealth nuke, there's no need to worry about the Patriots intercepting it. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll all be over.
As good as a technician Otacon and Naomi are, the truth is, in the end of the MGS series, to liberate the world really wouldn't have been possible without Sonny. The game makes that very clear.
I had an obligation to stop it. With a little help from Sonny. She helped me. She believed her talents could help you all put GW to rest. What she created was an anti-AI FoxDye. But this virus's name is FoxAlive. It's the conceptual opposite of the nanomachines that I created all those years ago. We wish to free the captured foxes.
But even with Sonny not around, it would have still been possible for Naomi to create this FoxAlive virus, giving Snake the fighting chance he needs to preserve humanity. Ocelot once again would gladly take the assistance of Naomi, as Eva and Ocelot enlisted their assistants such as Naomi and Grey Fox to kill Paramedic, one of the Patriots members, in 2003. To outsiders of this plan such as Otacon and Snake were unaware of Naomi's intentions, but they were quite clear, and I think it also spoke volumes on Ocelot's intentions as well, as to bring around what I believe the outcome that came to be that was FoxAlive. It's more than likely that he was aware that Naomi was creating this virus to destroy the Patriots with Sonny, but just went along with his side of the mission to fool the Patriots. And well, I guess if Snake failed, Ocelot's idea would have to do. It's unclear how Solidus would respond to this ruse, but it's more than unlikely Ocelot wouldn't tell him what's been going on behind the scenes in terms of them trying to destroy the Patriots. It wouldn't really matter to Solidus because if FoxAlive was still uploaded, his dream of achieving to destroy the Patriots would have still come true, even if it wasn't by his own hand, or even having the glory to take from the fact that he did it himself, because Solidus has quite a big ego. Hypothetically, if Solidus was to turn on Ocelot, I don't think he would win, simply because he wouldn't have the funding he needs to create an army enough strong enough to destroy him. Don't forget, at this point in Metal Gear Solid 4, Ocelot has practically all of the top PMC groups under his command, and if they was to go to war, I don't think Solidus would stand much of a chance. A 1-to-1, however, would be a different story, but in Solidus' circumstances, it would be beneficial for him to actually work alongside Ocelot, and vice versa, as I've explained in the latter. But let's just say hypothetically, FoxAlive wasn't possible. So just as Ocelot planned, if Snake failed, the world would have been driven into chaos. It will have been the Wild West all over again.
America will descend into chaos. It'll be the Wild West all over again.
Creating the vision that Big Boss so often invoked, the idea of a soldier's heaven where soldiers can be free to fight for themselves. Ocelot adapted that dream. Ocelot's outer heaven would have been an entire country without control or laws. Total anarchy. This way everyone could fight for themselves just like Big Boss intended. These ideals would most likely align with Solidus, who could still fulfill his own dream of being remembered like George Washington and his liberation efforts, a mark of existence for people to fight for their own context, instead of it being chosen for them. Solid Snake would try to get close to stop Solidus and Ocelot as a Patriot pawn, with a new strain of fox dye to kill off any of the Patriots' kill list, of course, unknowingly on his part, but would most likely be overwhelmed. Even if he did pull off the impossible and defeated Ocelot and Solidus and Big Boss through fox dye and kicking their asses, it would still be too late. Even Snake admitted to Ocelot, they could have pretty much stopped us. Look at how many times, as a badass as Snake is, he was in a vulnerable position for Ocelot to have killed him off there and then. But he didn't, because their plans ultimately aligned. And I never think Ocelot truly intended to eliminate Big Boss's sons, but he had to play the long ball to defeat the Patriots. However, if Raiden died, that would have made the progress much quicker. The outcome of the story would end in Big Boss's initial favour. The world would be in a constant bang of ideologies and war and chaos, but ultimately end in a whimper. Because as we know, Big Boss's outlook in MGS4, realising none of them truly understood the boss's will, aside from maybe Solid Snake and Sonny, to leave the world as it is, but instead it becomes a world dragging itself back to the Dark Ages, a reverse evolution of human society. No law and order, just chaos and uncivilised principles, excusing the worst of humans' nature's traits to come alive again, in a new ideological battle under the cycle that repeats. The ideation of control, of the victor of the battlefield to control the world order, such as the Patriots. It would be exactly as Ocelot implied. Snake probably wouldn't get killed, because chances are he'd just retire and accept defeat along with the other characters, who are essentially just pawns of the Patriots anyway. Once the nuke would have been fired, since Snake has no way of uploading a virus, the nuke would have hit JD, freeing Big Boss from his shackles, but it's unclear where this story would go next. With the revival of Big Boss, Ocelot would want to reunite with his old friend. I mean, that's his main purpose, was to try and free Big Boss. It's more than likely it would play out very similar to MGS4's ending. Ocelot and Big Boss would converse before eliminating Zero. It's uncertain if Solidus would come along for the ride, since he doesn't really care about Big Boss, and believes there's only room for one. It's unclear how this interaction could play out. Solidus doesn't harbour a bitter resentment against Big Boss like Liquid does, which would make it blatantly obvious that he'd want to settle the score if he was given the chance. In fact, he admires the fact he looks like him.
You're the spitting image of Big Boss.
Is that so?
But it's unclear if his goals align with Big Boss, where the world is just one big battlefield where soldiers are needed. Liquid's views were more extreme than Solidus in terms of Big Boss's vision, but ultimately agreed with it. But Solidus isn't too far from what Big Boss was trying to achieve: individuality and freedoms. The purposes and principles still remain the same. I honestly can't see a reason why Solidus would want to come to blows with his father. I'd like to think Ocelot, Solidus, Solid Snake and Big Boss would reunite in some sort of a Mexican standoff, guns pointed at each other, and them talking about everything and the Patriots' control, and their views and outlooks on really how they think the world should be, perhaps before parting ways. I think Big Boss would be the peacekeeper, and people would lower their weapons. Big Boss is a changed man at the end of MGS4. His original vision would come true, but it would be a nightmare that haunts him, since he truly understands now what the boss's will was really about and no longer wishes to fan the flames of war. But the problem is, it could turn sour. Since Solid Snake is a Patriot agent who has a new strain of Fox dye to eliminate former Patriot members, Big Boss was willing to die anyway, so I don't think he'd be too bothered. He's old and his time is running short anyway, and he's done with this system. But Solidus might respond differently, causing a battle between the two. I'll let you guys decide who wins that. All Solidus wants is to be remembered, because just like his brothers, his time is also short as well because of the advanced aging. So there really isn't much point in starting a republic or creating a new nation. This goes for everyone here, who would probably call it a day before heading their own way. Solidus would be praised around the world for lifting the veil and saving humanity and liberating all. There probably would be monuments of him, posters, books, talking about his legendary history, and I think that would be more than enough to make him die happy. And same would be for Ocelot, as he's worked hard to get everything that he's achieved, which is Big Boss. It would be epic to see them all go for a few beers, chalking it up about old times, but considering Snake is riddled with Fox dye, it wouldn't be a pleasant day out. But the beautiful message of the symbology of the story is the very thing that the Patriots used to stop people trying to take out their control system would be the very thing that actually worked against them in the end, and I think that would add some poetic beauty. All the Snakes reunited, along with Ocelot sharing in a few final moments. Well, with all of that being said, this is just my take on what I believe would happen if Solidus remained alive. He would liberate the world, but not in the way Sonny did, and the world would end up being in arms again, ultimately restoring Big Boss's dreams. But the ending that I've given might seem like a happy one, but in reality it's a bittersweet one. But I can't see why it would end bad between all the characters who ultimately shared the same goal at the end. I'd like to thank you guys, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this. If Solidus survived, then how would it play out in your own headcanon? Please leave a like and consider subscribing. Thank you guys for all your support, and until we meet again.
Leading an abnormal impulse cascade throughout the neural network. I can't shut it down.
What happened?
Maybe some kind of virus.
The Patriots?
I don't know.
Ocelot, what have you been up to?
It's too late. Arsenal's system control is going haywire. It's on an emergency ascent course.